The longer the bonus army remained in Washington, the more pressure Congress began to feel. Every day, thousands of veterans walked the streets of the nation's capital. Many wore pieces of their old military uniforms. Others carried American flags. They weren't demanding special treatment. They were asking the government to pay a bonus it had already promised them years before. For some members of Congress, their argument made sense. America was in the middle of the worst economic crisis in its history. Paying the bonus would put money directly into the hands of struggling families. Others strongly disagreed. The government was already facing enormous financial challenges. Paying the bonus early would cost more than $2 billion in today's money. President Herbert Hoover believed approving the payment would set a dangerous precedent. If the government changed the agreement once, what would stop others from demanding early payments in the future? After weeks of debate, the House of Representatives narrowly approved a bill that would allow veterans to receive their bonuses immediately. Hope spread through the camps. Many believed they had won, but their celebration didn't last long. The bill moved to the Senate. There, it failed. The bonus would not be paid. Thousands of veterans suddenly found themselves stranded in Washington with nowhere else to go. Some packed their belongings and headed home. Many refused to leave. They believed Congress could still change its mind. As the days passed, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Government officials became concerned about the growing encampments. While most veterans remained peaceful, authorities feared that the situation could spiral out of control. On July 28, 1932, everything changed. Police officers were sent to remove several veterans from government-owned buildings. The confrontation quickly became violent. Shots were fired. 2 veterans were killed. News of the deaths spread rapidly throughout Washington. President Hoover decided the camps had to be cleared. He ordered the army to restore order and remove the remaining protesters. The operation would be led by one of America's most respected military officers, General Douglas MacArthur. MacArthur believed the bonus army was more than a group of desperate veterans. He became convinced that communist agitators and revolutionaries were using the protests to threaten the government. Historians still debate how accurate that belief was. While a handful of political activists were present, most evidence suggests the overwhelming majority of the bonus army consisted of unemployed veterans simply asking for financial relief. Nevertheless, MacArthur prepared for a military operation. His force included infantry soldiers, cavalry units, machine gun detachments, and 6 M1917 tanks. One of the officers under his command was a young major named George S. Patton. Another officer assigned to the operation was Major Dwight D. Eisenhower. Within little more than a decade, both men would become famous during World War II. Ironically, many of the veterans facing them had once served beside them during World War I. Late that afternoon, soldiers formed ranks in the streets of Washington. Residents gathered along sidewalks in disbelief. Few believed the army would actually confront American veterans. Then the advance began. Patton's cavalry charged through the streets, forcing veterans and civilians to scatter. Infantry followed close behind with fixed bayonets. Tear gas drifted through neighborhoods. Families fled, carrying children in their arms. Many veterans refused to fight back. Instead, they tried to protect their wives and children as the army pushed forward. By evening, the military had reached the main encampment at Anacostia Flats. President Hoover had instructed the army not to cross the bridge into the largest camp. He believed removing the veterans from downtown Washington was enough. MacArthur ignored the order. Convinced the protest represented a greater threat, he ordered his troops to continue. The soldiers crossed the bridge. The camp was surrounded. Veterans gathered what little they owned. Some stood silently as soldiers approached. Others desperately tried to save family photographs, blankets, and clothing. The army ordered everyone to leave. Then, the camp was set on fire. Wooden homes burned throughout the night. Smoke rose over the nation's capital. Everything many families still possessed disappeared in the flames. The images shocked Americans across the country. Newspapers published photographs of veterans fleeing burning camps, while U.S. soldiers stood nearby. The public reaction was swift. Many Americans who had opposed the bonus army now believed the government's response had gone far too far. President Hoover defended the operation as necessary to restore order. But politically, the damage had already been done. Only a few months later, Hoover lost the presidential election to Franklin Delano Roosevelt in one of the largest landslides in American history. Ironically, Roosevelt also opposed paying the bonus immediately. However, unlike Hoover, he chose a different approach. Rather than sending the army, Roosevelt invited many unemployed veterans to join the newly created Civilian Conservation Corps. Thousands accepted the opportunity to work, earn a paycheck, and support their families. Finally, in 1936, Congress passed legislation granting immediate payment of the veterans' bonuses. President Roosevelt vetoed the bill because he believed the government still could not afford it. Congress overrode his veto. For the first time, the veterans received the compensation they had been waiting more than a decade to collect. Today, the bonus army is remembered as one of the defining moments of the Great Depression. It raised difficult questions that still resonate today. How should a nation care for those who served it? When does maintaining public order become an abuse of power? And what responsibility does a government have when promises made during wartime collide with hardship at home? The bonus army wasn't remembered because it won a battle. It was remembered because it forced America to confront those questions. Nearly a century later, the images remain unforgettable. American veterans marching peacefully beneath the Capitol. American soldiers marching toward them, and a nation struggling to decide what it truly owed the people who had fought in its name.